Good evening and welcome. Tonight we're going to be reading this book about India. So let's just dive right in. Here we can see where India is located in the world. Let's read about India. From monsoon to drought, we get pointer pencil to help us read. In July 2005, a new world record was set. In one 24-hour period, 37 inches of rain fell on the city of Mumbai on the west coast of India. Many people died, and thousands of slum shacks were washed away in the torrential downpour. Indians are used to heavy rains during the annual monsoon, but no one could remember weather like that. 3 years earlier, not far from Mumbai, in the desert state of Rajasthan, the monsoon failed to arrive for the 4th year in a row, and the already dry land was baked to a hard crust. Wells ran dry, and desperate people began moving to the cities. India's climate is dominated by the monsoons, strong winds that change direction with the seasons. They bring heavy rain from June to September. The top of the world. Here we go. In the far north of India, forming a natural barrier with China, are the world's highest mountains, the snow-capped Himalaya. Buddhist pilgrims traveling in ancient times gave the range its name. Hima is Sanskrit for snow, and Alaya means abode or home. The mountains appear in the Hindu religious epics. The stepped shape of Hindu temples is intended to be a replica of the mighty mountains where Hindus believe the gods live. Indians worship the Himalaya because they sustain life. The snow melts into 19 major rivers, including the Indus, Ganges, and Brahmaputra that flow across the plains of India. The Himalaya are 3 parallel chains of mountains with deep valleys between them. The range stretches in a general direction of east to west over a distance of 1,553 miles. From north to south, the range varies between 93 and 250 miles in width. The Ganges Plain. The Earth's surface is made up of huge plates that move in different directions and at different speeds. For millions of years, as the Indo-Australian and Eurasian plates collided, rocks were forced upward to form the Himalaya. As rivers cut through the rising rock, they carried vast amounts of soil down to the Ganges Plain below the mountains. In some places, this layer of debris is over 25,000 feet deep. The process continues today. The Ganges River carries about 1 million tons of silt to the plain every year. The silt makes the land very fertile, and as a result, the plain is one of the world's most intensively farmed areas. Crops include rice, wheat, corn, sugarcane, and cotton. The fertile plain supports tens of thousands of villages, as well as some of India's largest cities. The Peninsula. Most of India forms a peninsula, which looks like an upside-down triangle. In the west is the Great Thar Desert. Despite a lack of water, the desert is home to some of India's most beautiful cities, including the pink city of Jaipur and the blue city of Jodhpur, both named for the color of their buildings. To the south of the Ganges Plain is the Deccan Plateau, which in the south is bordered on either side by hills, the eastern and western Ghats. The mountains are named for the steppes that line the banks of the Ganges because they run parallel to the coast. They eventually meet in the far south of India as the fertile Nilgiri Hills, which are covered with spice forests, tea plantations, and coffee bushes. The Deccan Plateau is about 2,000 feet high. It receives less rainfall than the plains below, and in the dry season its rivers dry up. When the monsoon rains arrive, fast-moving torrents of water create spectacular waterfalls that tumble over the edges of the plateau. Large fortresses built by some of India's former rulers dominate the plateau ridges. Coasts and beaches. The strip of coastal plain between the Arabian Sea and the northern part of the Western Ghats is called the Konkan. Only about one-third of the land is suitable for farming, and most people live in the river valleys and in industrial areas around cities such as Mumbai. It's a lovely picture. Some of the world's most beautiful beaches lie between Goa and Kerala in the far south. Inland from the Kerala beaches are the Backwaters, a series of narrow, natural canals that crisscross the landscape. The canals are lined with houses, coconut palms, and rubber trees. In the past, villagers used 80-foot boats to transport rice, coconuts, and other goods to coastal ports. The ketuvalam, or boat with knots, was held together with core rope made from the fibrous husks of coconuts. Not a single nail was used. Part of the boat was covered with bamboo and core matting to serve as living quarters for the crew. Today, many ketuvalam have been converted to houseboats so that tourists can explore the canals in comfort. Many of India's major rivers reach the sea on the east coast, which means that the coastal plain has been formed by deep layers of sediment. The deltas or river mouths are a maze of shifting channels, and ocean tides can reach far inland. Even a small rise in sea level would submerge the large city of Kolkata, which is about 95 miles inland. The southern state of Tamil Nadu is one of India's most fertile regions and is often called the Rice Bowl of India. The women of Tamil Nadu use finely ground rice flour and coloring to make elaborate, sacred drawings called kolam on moistened ground in front of their houses. Young girls learn the patterns from their mothers, grandmothers, or aunts. Animals and gods. Lying in the middle of a busy street amid the traffic and crowds is a group of cows. Buses, taxis, motorbikes, and automobiles swerve to avoid hitting them. For thousands of years since Hinduism first evolved as a religion, respect for animal life has been an important part of Indians' beliefs. Cows in particular are sacred to Hindus and cannot be harmed. But as cities have grown more crowded, the thousands of cows that share the streets with residents pose an increasing problem. They rip open garbage bags in search of food, and of course they add to the traffic chaos. Some cities have hired men to catch cows and release them outside the city, or place them in special reserves where the animals can be cared for. Cute. High in the Himalaya. The Himalaya provide a home for some of India's rarest animals and plants. The most elusive of Indian animals is the snow leopard. Its wailing calls are often mistaken for those of the yeti, a mythical mountain monster. The leopard preys on muntjak. Muntjak are also called barking deer because they make a deep barking noise when alarmed. Bears and black buck live lower down in the flower-filled rhododendron forests. In the extreme northeast of the mountain range, the tiger and the one-horned rhinoceros can be found. Plants cannot grow above 14,400 feet. Below that, they have adapted to the extreme cold and strong winds by growing low to the ground. Pretty. Fertile plain to desert. In the far west of India is the vast Thar Desert, which stretches from India to Pakistan. It is the natural habitat of the camel, which is a popular form of transportation for people in the isolated desert villages. In contrast, the fertile Ganges plain supports a wide variety of animal life, including many different kinds of bird. In the far east are the Sundarban, a network of tidal rivers and flat, marshy islands covered with mangrove forest, which is one of the last preserves of the Bengal tiger. The Asiatic lion once lived all across Asia, but now only 350 of them live wild in the Gir forest in western India. These lions have a shorter mane than their African relatives. India was also once home to many wild elephants. There are several differences between Indian and African elephants. The Indian elephant is smaller in size with smaller ears, and the females do not have tusks. the country still has many elephants, but most of them are tame and live with people. They are used for transportation and as heavy lifters on construction sites. Each working elephant has a keeper called a mahout to look after it. A young boy will grow up with his elephant, and they remain together until one of them dies. A mahout spends time washing, feeding, and caring for his elephant. Man and animal develop a bond that allows the mahout to control the elephant with verbal commands and touch. But the elephant is still unpredictable, and the mahout has to be alert, especially during the mating season when male elephants become very aggressive. A blend of many cultures. The Taj Mahal has been called a love letter in stone. Emperor Shah Jahan was heartbroken when his beloved wife, Mumtaz Mahal, died in childbirth. He decided to build the world's most beautiful tomb in her memory. It would be made entirely of white marble, decorated with semi-precious stones. The tomb would be set in a formal garden with avenues, fountains, and a pool that reflected the Taj. Building started in 1631. 1,000 elephants carried the white marble from Rajasthan to Agra, where 20,000 workers labored for more than 20 years. At the very center of the building is Mumtaz Mahal's white marble casket. According to legend, Shah Jahan planned a black marble tomb for himself, but it was never built. Instead, he was laid to rest next to his wife. I'm going to read this page because it makes more sense on the next page. The Indus Peoples. In the 1920s, archaeologists explored the long-buried ruins of two huge cities dating back to about 3000 BCE in the valley of the Indus River. They named the cities Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. Although both sites are now in Pakistan, the Indus civilization is connected to later Indian cultures such as the Dravidians. The Indus peoples lived in brick houses up to 3 stories high, arranged along streets planned on a grid system. The houses had a piped water supply and bathrooms linked to sewers. No other ancient civilization had anything like it. The Indus peoples seem to have been peaceful and prosperous. They grew wheat and cotton and used metals to make tools. Their society was ruled by priests. The Harappans could write, but no one has been able to read their writing. Nobody knows why the cities were abandoned in about 1700 BCE. It may have been because of flooding or invasion by a more warlike culture. The Aryans. The Aryan people were farmers from Central Asia who arrived in India around 1500 BCE when the Harappan civilization was all but over. The Aryans spoke Sanskrit, one of the world's oldest known languages and the origin of most of the languages spoken in India today. They had advanced weapons, including war chariots, and were able to push India's earlier inhabitants, the Dravidians, south to the region where they still live. Over the centuries, Aryan society developed into the system of social ranks or castes that still influences Indian society today. Caste is determined by birth, and there is almost no way to change it. Members of a caste can marry only within the group. The highest castes are the priests, followed by landowners, soldiers, and then craftsmen. Untouchables have no caste and do the most menial jobs. The Vedic Scriptures, which form the basis of the Hindu religion, were written sometime between 1500 and 1200 BCE. Veda means knowledge. The Aryans worshipped many different gods, but they believed these gods were different aspects of one divine power. Hindus still believe this today. Greeks and Buddhists. In the 4th century BCE, the Greek general Alexander the Great led an army across Asia and arrived in India in 326 BCE. He took control of the Punjab, a fertile area now split between India and Pakistan. However, he was prevented from traveling further east because his troops had been away from home for so long that they refused to keep fighting. Alexander left India and died soon after. A dynasty named the Mauryans took control of the Punjab and then most of India. They were a farming society. The Mauryans were the first native people to unify most of India, except the Tamils in the south, the descendants of the Dravidians. The Mauryan Empire's greatest ruler was Ashoka, who ruled from 272 to 232 BCE. He turned against war and converted to the new religion of Buddhism. Ashoka spent the rest of his reign encouraging the spread of nonviolence, vegetarianism, and pilgrimage. Rise and fall. India, especially the northern areas, then entered a period of upheaval as many more rulers and empires battled for control. It was not until the Gupta Empire in the 4th century CE that India had its next period of stability. For 200 years, arts, crafts, and sciences flourished. The Indian astronomer Aryabhata worked out that the Earth revolved around the sun long before the Western world accepted the theory. Gupta power was shattered by Mongol invaders from Central Asia. For the next 5 centuries, the north once more relapsed into chaos, but in the far south, a separate Hindu culture continued to flourish. Mughal splendor. I can talk. Splendor. Beginning in the 11th century, a succession of Muslim invaders swept across India with varying amounts of success. In the 14th century, the Mongol leader Timur, or Tamerlane, attacked the plains of northern India. In the 16th century, Babur, a descendant of Tamerlane, founded the Mughal Empire, bringing 2 centuries of peace, prosperity, and magnificence to India. Aurangzeb, the great-grandson of Emperor Akbar, lacked his ancestors' diplomatic skills. He tried to make the whole country Islamic and started to tax his people heavily. Both moves were unpopular and led to rebellions. His unsuccessful military campaigns into the south damaged the economy. With his death in 1707, the Mughal Empire began to weaken. Successive rulers such as the Marathas in the 18th century followed, but fighting between different groups left India vulnerable to invasion by European powers. The Europeans arrive. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to arrive in India when the explorer Vasco da Gama reached Kerala in 1498. Portugal set up a colony in the state of Goa on the west coast early in the 16th century and kept it until 1961. Indian spices were highly prized in 16th century Europe. There was no way of preserving meat, and spices helped disguise the taste when it began to rot. Spices became more valuable than gold. The British, French, Dutch, and Danish also set up trading companies in India. But Britain and France had wider ambitions. They wanted to take control of the country. After a number of battles between the two countries, the British gained effective control of most of India in 1757, but the French retained a few small coastal colonies until 1954. The British Empire. With victory, the British set about changing their role from traders to rulers. The British East India Company, set up to organize trade with India, grew more powerful and began to control other aspects of Indian life. Soon the British government was running the country in place of the East India Company. At the start of the 19th century, India was made up of states ruled by princes or maharajas. The British embarked on a program to unite the country. They constructed roads and railroads, introduced British forms of government, and made English the official language. Independence. The first major uprising against the British was in 1856, but it was not until the 20th century that protest became organized. After World War I, a man emerged who would lead the push for independence, Mahatma Gandhi. When World War II ended, Britain could no longer afford to keep India. Muslims began to fight Hindus for control, and it became clear that India would have to be divided into separate Muslim and Hindu states. On August 15, 1947, India became independent as a mainly Hindu country. The new Muslim country of Pakistan was granted independence a day earlier. Some 13 million Hindus and Muslims were forced to move between the new countries. Violence erupted and about 1 million people died. India and Pakistan went to war almost at once over Kashmir. The dispute over the state still goes on. Families and festivals. In India, it's easy to tell if a Hindu woman has just gotten married. For weeks after the wedding, her hands and perhaps her feet are stained with a brown-red pattern. In some regions, the husband also has dyed hands. The dyeing, called mehendi, is said to bring good luck to a marriage. The day before the wedding, the bride's family and friends gather to draw the designs in a paste made from henna. The bride sits very still while the paste dries. She must be patient. It takes several hours to dry. Then the paste is washed off, leaving the pattern dyed on her skin. Mehendi is just one part of the wedding. Celebrations can last for days with hundreds of guests. People often travel a long way to attend the lavish family celebrations. Getting married. A wedding is a highlight for any Indian family. It is still common for two families to arrange a marriage between their children. Sunday newspapers in Indian cities have pages and pages of advertisements from families looking for a husband or wife for a daughter or son. The advertisements specify exactly what a family is looking for. If families agree to a match, the future bride and groom meet. Often the marriage goes ahead only if they agree to it. Many couples in arranged marriages fall in love after they are married. Today, a growing number of young people, especially in the larger cities, find their own partners by dating. In a traditional home, a new wife moves in with her husband's family. She takes over the running of the home from her mother-in-law. The heart of life. The family is at the heart of Indian life. Parents, children, aunts, uncles, and grandparents traditionally share the same house. More families now consist of just parents and their children, but they still have strong links with their other relatives. Everyone in the family gives one another economic and emotional support when it is needed. Old people are respected for their age and wisdom. Polite baseball. Many parts of Indian life still show the influence of Britain, which governed the country for nearly 2 centuries. The British brought cricket to India in the 18th century. The game, which has been described as polite baseball, is the most popular sport in India. The Indian national cricket team is one of the best in the world. Its top players are treated like movie stars. Youngsters learn to play cricket on any empty ground. If they do not have real equipment, they use a piece of wood as a bat and anything round as a ball. Cricket is a popular spectator sport too, particularly games against India's neighbor Pakistan. When the national team plays, people are glued to their TV sets. Other popular sports in India include soccer, tennis, polo, which is played on horseback, and field hockey. The Indian men's field hockey team has won Olympic gold on 8 occasions. Contradictions in education. India has the highest proportion of people who cannot read or write in the world. About 40% of Indians are illiterate. While most Indians agree that education is important, it is also expensive. School is only free up to age 11. After that, parents have to pay for books, tuition, and clothes. Most students wear a school uniform. Many children drop out of school to help earn income for their families. University education is expensive. Only children from quite wealthy families can afford to go. They often study subjects that will help them get a good job, such as medicine, law, or information technology. 10 years ago, an IT graduate from India had to move to find a good job, often to California. Today, they only have to go as far as Bangalore. The city has become one of the world's main computer centers. Many religions. India is a very spiritual country. It has no official religion, but it is dominated by Hinduism. More than 80% of Indians are Hindu. The second most popular religion is Islam. Only 13% of Indians are Muslim, but that still means that India has one of the world's biggest Muslim populations. Other religions include Buddhism, Sikhism, and Jainism, which all began in India, and Christianity. At the same time, many people from the West have become interested in Indian beliefs. Most Hindu homes have some kind of shrine to one of the hundreds of gods. People in Mumbai traditionally revere Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth. Many homes have a statue to her, garlanded with flowers. Ganesha, the elephant god, and Hanuman, the monkey god, are favorites everywhere. Many sadhus, Hindu holy men, live with grey langur monkeys, which are also named Hanuman langurs for the god. Tandoor or thali. Indian food is popular around the world. In the north, people eat meat, vegetables, and bread such as naan and chapati. These are cooked in clay ovens called tandoors. In the south, where many people are vegetarians, the main dish served is thali. That is a complete meal of vegetables, rice, Indian bread, and dessert, all served in small containers on a single large plate. On the east coast, fish is the main food. Almost everyone eats rice, bread, and dal. Dal is made from lentils and spices, and there are hundreds of different types. You could eat dal every day for a year and never taste the same one twice. Indian fast food is very different from burgers and fries. Snacks such as bel puri are sold in the street or on the beach. Bel puri is a tasty mixture of crispy noodles, puffed rice, potatoes, onion, coriander leaves, and spicy chutney. Coconut sellers are common beside Indian roads. They cut open fresh coconuts and customers drink the milk inside through a straw. When they have finished, the coconut seller scrapes out the soft flesh for their customers to eat. Sitars and tablas. Indians love music. Taxi drivers play their cassette players as loud as they can, and radios blast out from stores. You often hear the sitar, an instrument that looks like a cross between a guitar and a violin, but does not sound like either. The sitar is traditionally accompanied by small hand drums known as tabla. Every village has its own music and dances. There are dances for weddings, births, moving to a new home, and harvest time. Religious festivals also involve dancing. A booming economy. Young girls walk back from the village well with as much water as they can carry. On their heads they carry large metal pots full of water. Some have another pot tucked under an arm. These are just some of the millions of children across India who do chores to help their families. India has the world's largest number of workers under the age of 14. Although laws ban children from working in dangerous places like mines or in hotels and restaurants, many employers take no notice. Often, families encourage children to take jobs such as knotting carpets or making fireworks. The extra income is really useful, and many children would rather work than go to school, especially when classrooms are crowded, so it is hard to learn. One party, one family. After India gained independence from Great Britain in 1947, one political party and just one family dominated politics. The Congress Party was led by Mahatma Gandhi's successor, Jawaharlal Nehru. 2 years after Nehru's death in 1964, his daughter, Indira Gandhi, became prime minister. She was not related to Mahatma Gandhi, but sharing the same name helped her political career. She was prime minister for 15 years with one brief gap. Her first son, Rajiv Gandhi, was prime minister for 5 years from 1984 to 1989. The Gandhis had many enemies. Both Indira and Rajiv Gandhi were killed. Indira Gandhi was killed by her own bodyguards. They were Sikhs who were angry because she had ordered an army attack on the Golden Temple at Amritsar, the Sikhs' holiest shrine. Rajiv Gandhi was killed by Sri Lankan terrorists. They did not want India to be involved in a civil war with Sri Lanka. With the death of Rajiv Gandhi, the Gandhi family disappeared from public view until 2004, when Rajiv Gandhi's Italian-born widow, Sonia, led the Congress Party in elections. Although the party won and she could have become prime minister, she chose not to take up the post. Opposition parties. A number of opposition parties have challenged the Congress Party's domination of Indian politics. None were successful until the rise of the Bharatiya Janata Party, or BJP. The BJP is a Hindu nationalist party. It became very popular in the 1990s when religious tensions between the majority Hindus and minority Muslims flared up. During the last part of the 1990s, the BJP led the government. That was made up of several other parties. In 2004, they suffered a surprise defeat. The Congress Party once again came to govern India. Indian giant. At the start of the 21st century, India's economy was a spectacular success story. It has grown so fast that experts predict it will soon become one of the world's leading economies together with China. Indians have always had a reputation for working hard. That goes from the man who mends shoes on the street to an executive in one of India's giant companies. Hard work is at the heart of India's boom, and there is another reason. Although many Indians are poorly educated, there are millions who are highly trained English-speaking college graduates. Indian scientists and engineers are particularly valuable to the economy. More and more Indians can afford to buy luxury items like jewelry, washing machines, and televisions. Indian factories must work harder to meet the demand. Between 2005 and 2006, for example, the number of Indians who used cell phones more than doubled, from 52 million to 123 million. Silicon Valley Indian style. Bangalore is India's fastest growing city. It is like California's Silicon Valley, the major IT center in the United States. Smart young people move to Bangalore to get jobs creating new computer software. The software industry in India has grown by 50% a year for the last few years. The money flowing into Bangalore has transformed the city in the last 20 years. There are restaurants, hotels, movie theaters, and shopping malls for well-paid young workers. Real estate prices are soaring and rush hour traffic backs up for miles. Farmers left behind. Mahatma Gandhi believed that India's heart lay in its villages, but today the countryside is missing out on India's boom. Since independence, farming has been a success story. More land was planted with crops, and new farming techniques were introduced to water the fields and control pests. The result became known as the Green Revolution. India grew enough food to feed its own population for the first time. It no longer needed to import grain, for example. But the advances in technology have mostly benefited large landowners. Most farms cover less than 3 acres. Farmers grow just enough to feed their own families. They have nothing extra to sell and no spare money to buy seeds or fertilizer. If they borrow money, they must repay the loan with a percentage of the crop. If a harvest fails because of poor rainfall, the farmers face large debts. Looking ahead. India has reasons to be confident. Its economy is still growing rapidly. Many people are enjoying a higher standard of living. In politics, the country is more stable than it has been for a long time. Talks have even begun with Pakistan about the disputed border in the state of Kashmir. But India also faces many challenges. It has the second highest population in the world after China. So many people place great pressure on the environment. Much of the rural population lives in poverty. Indians look forward to becoming truly prosperous when all of their people can enjoy a taste of their country's new wealth. And that's going to be the end for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this video relaxing and educational. And I hope that you have a very good night.